The Galactic Council had ruled space for over 3,000 years. 12 old alien races sat around a big table on their capital world, making rules for everyone else in the galaxy. They called themselves the masters of all civilized life among the stars. When humans first flew into space and met aliens, it happened near a small planet called Kepler 7. Captain Jake Miller was flying his ship called Starlight when they bumped into a council patrol. Jake was a simple man from Texas who loved flying fast ships. He had brown hair, kind eyes, and always wore his lucky cowboy boots even in space. The aliens seemed friendly at first. They smiled with their strange faces and welcomed the humans. Council Speaker Vorthak was a tall, gray creature with 4 arms and glowing yellow eyes. He spoke in a voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. "Welcome to our galaxy, young humans," Vorthak had said. "We will teach you the proper way to live among the stars." But things changed fast when the Council learned how quickly humans were growing. In just 50 years, humans had built homes on 47 different worlds. They made new weapons, new ships, and new cities faster than any species the Council had ever seen. This scared the old aliens. They had never met anyone who could learn and build so fast. Every other race took hundreds of years to do what humans did in decades. Commander Lisa Brown was in charge of protecting human colonies. She was a tough woman from California, with short black hair and a scar on her left cheek from a mining accident years ago. Lisa had worked hard her whole life, first as a space miner, then as a soldier, and now as a leader. One morning, Lisa was drinking coffee in her office on Mars when a big council ship appeared outside. The ship was huge, bigger than any human building. It looked like a metal mountain floating in space. Speaker Vorthak's face appeared on Lisa's computer screen. His yellow eyes glowed brighter than usual, and his voice was colder than space itself. "Commander Brown," he said, "the Council has made a decision about your species." Lisa put down her coffee cup. She could tell this was not going to be good news. "We are listening," she said. "Humans have grown too fast and spread too far. You are disturbing the peace of our galaxy. The Council orders humanity to do 3 things. First, you must leave all your colonies except 3 worlds. Second, you must give us all your military ships. Third, you must let the Council control your government from now on." Lisa felt her blood turn cold. "And if we refuse?" Vorthak's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile. "Then we will destroy every human world, including Earth. You have 30 days to decide." The screen went black. Lisa sat alone in her office, staring at the empty screen. She thought about her daughter Amy, who was studying to be a doctor on Earth. She thought about all the families living peacefully on human colonies. She thought about everything humans had built in the past 50 years. Then she picked up her phone and called Admiral Gary Stone. Gary was the head of all human military forces. He was an old man with gray hair and deep wrinkles around his eyes. Gary had been a soldier for 40 years, fighting pirates and protecting colonies. He was sitting in his office on Luna Base when Lisa called. "Gary," Lisa said, "we have a big problem." She told him everything Vorthak had said. Gary listened without speaking. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "How many days did they give us?" he asked. 30. "Have they done this before?" "I looked it up," Lisa said. 6 other species got the same ultimatum in the past 1,000 years. 3 of them surrendered and became slaves. The other 3 fought back. What happened to the ones who fought? Their home planets are now empty balls of glass floating in space. Gary rubbed his tired eyes. He thought about his grandson Tommy, who was only 5 years old and loved to play with toy spaceships. He thought about all the brave men and women who served under his command. He thought about Earth, beautiful blue Earth, where humans had lived for thousands of years. "Lisa," he said, "call everyone. We need a meeting." 2 hours later, the most important humans in the galaxy were sitting around a table in Gary's conference room. There was President Mary Clark, a smart woman from New York who had worked her way up from being a teacher to leading all of humanity. There was Dr. Ryan Davis, who made the best weapons and ships humans had ever seen. There was Colonel Amy White, who led special operations and could sneak into places nobody thought possible. Gary stood up and looked at each person in the room. These were good people, smart people, brave people. But were they strong enough to fight the most powerful force in the galaxy? You all know why we are here, Gary said. The Council wants us to give up almost everything we have built. They want us to become their slaves. If we say no, they will try to kill every human in the galaxy. President Clark leaned forward. What do we know about their military? Dr. Ryan opened a thick folder. They have ships bigger than our cities. They have weapons that can crack planets in half. They have been fighting wars for 3,000 years. By every measure, they should be able to destroy us easily. Colonel Amy smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Should be able to, but that does not mean they will be able to. What do you mean? Gary asked. The Council has been winning for so long they have forgotten how to really fight. They just show up with big ships and tell everyone to surrender. When people say no, they blow up planets from far away. They have never fought anyone who fights back in ways they do not expect. President Clark nodded slowly. Are you saying we have a chance? I am saying they have never fought humans before, Amy said. They do not know what we are capable of when we get really angry. Gary looked around the room one more time. All in favor of telling the Council to go to hell? Every hand went up. Then it is decided, Gary said. We fight. Outside the window, Earth turned slowly in the darkness of space, blue and beautiful, and peaceful. In 30 days, that peace would be over. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone crossed a line that humans had drawn in the stars. The Council thought they knew everything about war. They were about to discover they knew nothing about human war. President Mary Clark stood in front of the biggest gathering of humans ever seen. People from every colony, every ship, every space station were watching on their screens. Mary was 55 years old with silver hair and calm blue eyes. She had been a teacher before becoming president, and she still talked like she was explaining something important to her students. My fellow humans, she said, the Galaxy Council has given us a choice. They want us to give up our freedom, our homes, and our future. They think we will be scared of their big ships and old threats. She paused and looked directly into the camera. The Galaxy Council has crossed a line. Today we erase it. All across human space, people cheered. On Mars, miners put down their tools and raised their fists. On the farming colonies, families gathered around their screens and nodded with determination. On the military bases, soldiers stood straighter and gripped their weapons tighter. But cheering would not win this war. That job belonged to people like Dr. Ryan Davis. Ryan was a thin man with messy hair and thick glasses. He looked like he had not slept in weeks, which was probably true. Ryan spent most of his time in laboratories, building things that had never been built before. Other people made weapons to kill enemies. Ryan made weapons to confuse them. Admiral Stone, Ryan said, walking into Gary's office with a big smile. I have something to show you. Gary looked up from his desk, which was covered with reports about Council ship movements. Please tell me it is good news, Ryan. I could use some good news. It is better than good news, Ryan said. He put a small metal box on Gary's desk. The box was black and had no buttons or lights. It looked completely ordinary. This is Project Nightfall. Gary picked up the box. It was surprisingly light. What does it do? It learns, Ryan said. Every computer system is different, especially alien ones. But this little box can figure out any computer system and then break it from the inside. It does not matter if the computer is human, alien, or something we have never seen before. Gary set the box down carefully. How does it work? Remember how viruses spread in old Earth computers? This is like that, but much smarter. When it gets into an alien computer, it studies how that computer thinks. Then it starts changing things. Small changes at first, so nobody notices. Then, bigger changes. Eventually, the computer stops working completely, and the aliens cannot stop it. Ryan's smile got bigger. They cannot stop something they do not understand. The Council has been using the same computer systems for hundreds of years. They have never had to deal with a virus that learns and adapts. While Ryan was showing off his new weapon, Colonel Amy White was getting ready for the most dangerous mission of her life. Amy was 38 years old with red hair and green eyes. She had been a soldier since she was 18, and she was very good at getting into places where she was not supposed to be. Amy stood in front of 12 other soldiers in a small room on Luna Base. These were her best people, men and women who could sneak past any guard and break into any building. They had trained together for years and they trusted each other completely. "Listen up," Amy said. "We are going to hit the Council monitoring station at Kepler 442. This is not a normal mission. We are not going there to steal information or blow things up. We are going there to plant Dr. Davis's virus in their main computer." Sergeant Pete Wilson raised his hand. Pete was a big man from Alabama who could carry twice his own weight and never got tired. "Colonel, how do we get past their security?" Amy smiled. "We do not sneak past it. We walk right through it." The soldiers looked confused. Walking through alien security sounded like suicide. "Dr. Davis has been studying Council technology for months," Amy explained. "He found something interesting. All Council species have the same basic computer language. They all use the same security codes. They all think the same way about protecting their stuff." "So?" asked Corporal Jane Ross. Jane was small and fast, the kind of person who could climb walls and squeeze through tiny spaces. "So they are not expecting anyone to think differently," Amy said. "They have been dealing with the same alien races for thousands of years. Everyone follows the same rules, uses the same tactics, makes the same mistakes. But we are not everyone. We are humans." At the same time, Captain Steve Johnson was preparing his own impossible mission. Steve was the best pilot in the human fleet, a man who could fly anything with wings or engines. His ship was called the Valkyrie, and it was special because it could turn invisible. Steve's crew was small but skilled. Nicole Adams was an explosives expert who could make bombs out of household items. She was 29 years old with blonde hair and a laugh that could be heard across a room. Ben Martinez was a tactical officer who could plan battles in his head faster than computers could calculate them. He was quiet and serious, with dark eyes that missed nothing. "Okay, team," Steve said as they floated in space near the edge of Council territory. "We are going to fly straight into the heart of their capital system, the place where their big bosses make all their decisions." Nicole whistled softly. "That sounds extremely dangerous." "It is," Steve agreed. "But that is exactly why it will work. The Council has thousands of ships guarding their borders. They have sensors everywhere watching for enemy fleets. But they are not watching for one small invisible ship flying right past their front door." Ben was studying star charts on his computer. "The capital system has 17 planets and over 200 space stations. How do we find the right target?" Steve pointed to a dot on the star chart. "That is Council High Command. Every order, every decision, every plan starts there. If we can plant Ryan's virus in their main computer, we can mess up their entire war effort." The next morning, 3 different human teams began 3 different missions. Amy's soldiers put on stolen Council uniforms and flew toward the monitoring station. Steve's ship turned invisible and headed for the capital system. And back on Earth, Dr. Ryan Davis worked on making his virus even smarter and more dangerous. The Council thought they knew what war looked like. They expected humans to build big fleets and attack their strong points. They expected humans to fight like every other species had fought for thousands of years. They were about to learn that humans had their own ideas about war. The war did not start with explosions or big space battles. It started with something much stranger. Communications officer Tina Green was sitting in her small office on Luna Base, listening to alien radio signals through her headphones. Tina was 26 years old with curly brown hair and a talent for understanding languages. She could speak 15 different human languages and had been learning alien ones since first contact. Most people thought her job was boring, but Tina loved solving puzzles, and alien languages were the biggest puzzles of all. For 3 weeks, Tina had been recording every Council transmission she could find. The aliens thought their communications were secret, but human technology was better at listening than the Council realized. "Admiral Stone," Tina said, running into Gary's office with a huge smile. You need to hear this. Gary looked up from his reports. What did you find? The council is not really united, Tina said, playing a recording on her computer. Strange alien voices filled the room, speaking in clicks and whistles. This is Speaker Vorthak talking to the Drakmore Collective. He says the Zephyrian Empire cannot be trusted, and that they are planning to take over the galaxy after humans are destroyed. Gary listened carefully. What else? Tina played another recording. This is the Drakmore leader talking to his generals. He thinks Vorthak is lying about human strength to trick the collective into doing most of the fighting. So they do not trust each other? Not at all, Tina said. I have been listening for weeks. Every council species hates the others. They work together because they are scared of each other, not because they are friends. They have been enemies for thousands of years. Gary smiled for the first time in days. Tina, you just gave us the key to winning this war. The next phase of the human plan began with Lieutenant Commander Paul Wright. Paul was a psychology expert who understood how people thought and behaved. He was 34 years old with brown hair and a calm voice that made people want to trust him. Paul's job was not to fight aliens with weapons. His job was to fight them with ideas. The council species are like a group of people who hate each other but are forced to work together, Paul explained to his team. They stay united because they have a common enemy. But what happens if they start to believe their allies are more dangerous than their enemies? Paul's team began sending fake messages between council fleets. The messages looked real because they used the same codes and languages that Tina had learned from listening to alien communications. But the messages were designed to make each alien species suspicious of the others. One fake message claimed that Zephyrian ships were moving to attack Drakmore colonies. Another message suggested that the collective was secretly helping humans in exchange for advanced technology. A third message warned that Vorthak was planning to eliminate his council partners once the human threat was gone. Within days, council fleets that were supposed to be working together started watching each other instead of looking for human ships. Alien commanders spent more time worrying about backstabbing allies than fighting human enemies. While Paul was playing mind games, with the council leadership, Captain Helen Moore was showing them what human military tactics looked like. Helen was 42 years old with short black hair and scars on her hands from years of ship maintenance. She had worked her way up from being a mechanic to commanding her own squadron. Helen's ships were small and fast, nothing like the huge council warships. Where council fleets moved slowly and attacked from far away, Helen's squadron darted in and out like angry wasps. Remember, Helen told her pilots over the radio, we are not trying to destroy their big ships. We are trying to make them confused and scared. Helen's first target was a council supply convoy carrying food and fuel to their forward bases. Instead of attacking the convoy directly, her ships hit the escort vessels and then disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. The supplies were left floating in space, unguarded and easy to capture. Her second attack was even more confusing. Helen's squadron appeared near a council military base, fired a few shots at empty space, and then ran away. The base went to full alert, calling for help from nearby fleets. But when the reinforcements arrived, there was nothing to fight. What are the humans doing? Asked confused council commanders. Why do they attack and then run away? Why do they shoot at nothing? The answer was simple. Helen was not trying to win battles. She was trying to make the council waste time, fuel, and resources chasing shadows. Every time council ships rushed to investigate a false alarm, they were not doing their real job of protecting important targets. The most important breakthrough came from Dr. Susan Hill, who studied alien biology and behavior. Susan was 51 years old with gray hair and kind eyes. She had spent her whole career trying to understand how different species thought and acted. Admiral, Susan said, showing Gary her research files, I think I know why the council has been so successful for so long. Gary looked at the files, which were full of scientific diagrams and alien medical data. Explain it to me in simple terms, Susan. The council species are very advanced, but that advancement has made them weak in ways they do not realize. Susan said, they have had superior technology for thousands of years. They have never had to adapt quickly or think creatively under pressure. When they face a problem, They solve it by using bigger ships and more powerful weapons. And that does not work against humans? Humans are different. Every time we face a problem, we find a new way to solve it. When something does not work, we try something else. When the enemy adapts to our tactics, we change our tactics. The Council species have forgotten how to do that. Susan showed Gary a recording of a Council battle from 50 years ago. The alien ships moved in perfect formations, followed predictable patterns, and used the same strategies that had worked for centuries. They fight like a machine, Susan said. Very powerful, very organized, but not very flexible. Humans fight like... She paused, looking for the right words. Like humans, Gary finished. Exactly. Chaotic, unpredictable, always changing. The Council cannot understand us because we do not even understand ourselves sometimes. By the end of the first month of war, the Council was facing something they had never experienced before. Their communications were full of lies and confusion. Their supply lines were constantly disrupted by attacks that made no sense. Their fleets were chasing human ships that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Most importantly, the 12 Council species were starting to suspect each other of treachery. Ancient alliances were cracking under the pressure of fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules. The Council had expected a traditional war. Instead, they got something completely different. They got a human war. The final phase of the war began with Major Chris Lee and his special operations team doing something that shocked the entire galaxy. Chris was 31 years old with dark hair and quiet eyes. He was the kind of soldier who could disappear into shadows and appear anywhere without being noticed. Chris and his 12-person team had spent 2 months secretly traveling to Nexus Prime, the Council's most important world. This was where the Council leaders lived, where they kept their most precious treasures and where they felt completely safe. Remember, Chris told his team as they prepared for their mission, we are not here to kill anyone or blow anything up. We are here to send a message. The team split into 4 groups. Each group had a different target, but all the targets had one thing in common. They were symbols of Council power and history. The first group, led by Sergeant Kate Johnson, broke into the Council History Museum. This building contained artifacts from 3,000 years of Council rule. Ancient weapons, crowns of dead kings, and sacred objects from a dozen different alien cultures filled its halls. Kate's team did not steal anything. Instead, they left small human flags next to the most important artifacts. They also left notes written in perfect Council language that said, humans were here. We can reach anything. The second group, led by Corporal Mike Davis, infiltrated the Council Communication Center. This was where all important messages in the galaxy were sent and received. Mike's team planted Dr. Ryan's virus in the main computers, but they also did something else. They took control of the emergency broadcast system and sent a message to every world in Council space. The message was simple. The age of Council rule is ending. The age of freedom is beginning. Signed, the humans you tried to destroy. The third group, led by Lieutenant Sarah Brown, broke into the Council genetic archives. This was where the Council kept DNA samples and biological information about every species they ruled. Sarah's team copied all the information about enslaved species and then sent it to resistance groups on those worlds. The fourth group, led by Chris himself, had the most dangerous job. They broke into Speaker Vorthak's personal residence and left a gift on his desk, a small earth flower in a glass case with a note that said, "This is what you tried to destroy. This is what will outlive you." When Vorthak found the flower the next morning, he realized that humans could reach him anywhere, anytime. If they could put a flower on his desk, they could put a bomb there just as easily. While Chris was sending his message on Nexus Prime, Admiral Karen Davis was preparing for the biggest space battle in human history. Karen was Admiral Gary Stone's daughter, a brilliant military commander who had learned strategy from the best teacher in the galaxy. Karen was 35 years old with her father's gray eyes and her mother's stubborn determination. She commanded the human fleet from her flagship, a ship called Freedom's Edge. The Council had finally decided to commit their main battle fleet to one massive attack. They were bringing 1,200 warships to destroy the human colony world of New Texas. It was supposed to be the battle that ended the war. "All ships, this is Admiral Davis," Karen said over the fleet communication system. "The Council expects us to line up our ships and fight them the old-fashioned way. They expect us to lose because they have bigger ships and more firepower." She paused, looking out at the stars where the Council fleet was approaching. They are about to learn that humans do not fight old-fashioned wars. The Battle of New Texas began at dawn. The Council fleet arrived in perfect formation, their massive ships arranged in neat rows like soldiers on parade. They had done this same thing hundreds of times before against dozens of different enemies. But when they looked for the human fleet, they found something confusing. Instead of big warships, they saw thousands of small fighter craft buzzing around like angry insects. Commander Danny Johnson led the first wave of fighters. Danny was 28 years old and the best pilot in the human fleet. His fighters carried something the Council had never seen before: smart missiles that could think for themselves. When Danny's fighters fired their missiles, the weapons did not fly straight at Council ships. Instead, they flew in circles, studying the enemy vessels, learning how their shields and weapons worked. Then, when they understood enough, they attacked in ways that the Council could not defend against. Captain Laura Brown commanded a group of human destroyers that used a different kind of strange weapon. Laura's ships fired energy beams that turned Council shields into weapons against the aliens themselves. The stronger a Council ship's shields were, the more damage it took from its own defenses. But the real surprise came when the Council tried to retreat. They found that human ships had surrounded them completely, appearing from directions that should have been impossible. Captain Steve Johnson's invisible ship, Valkyrie, had been planting small devices all around the battle area for hours before the fighting started. These devices created false sensor readings that made Council ships think they were safe when they were actually surrounded. When the aliens tried to escape, they found human ships waiting for them everywhere they turned. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Council fleet was completely destroyed. Not a single human ship was lost. 3 days after the Battle of New Texas, Speaker Vorthak requested a meeting with human representatives. The meeting took place on a neutral space station, with both sides bringing only small diplomatic ships. Negotiator Angela White represented humanity at the meeting. Angela was 43 years old with silver hair and calm blue eyes. She had been a lawyer before becoming a diplomat, and she was very good at making deals that favored humans. Vorthak looked older and more tired than he had during their first meeting months ago. His yellow eyes were dim, and his 4 arms shook slightly as he spoke. "What do you want from us?" he asked Angela. "We surrender. We cannot fight you anymore. Just tell us what you want." Angela looked at the alien leader who had once threatened to destroy every human world. She thought about all the species the Council had enslaved over the centuries. She thought about all the worlds they had turned to glass when people refused to obey. "We wanted to be left alone," she said. "You crossed that line. Now there is no line." Vorthak's face showed confusion. "I do not understand." "The old rules are gone," Angela explained. "No more Council telling everyone how to live. No more threats against species who want to be free. No more lines drawn in space that people cannot cross. But there must be order. There must be government. There must be rules." Angela smiled. "There will be. But the rules will be made by free people working together, not by conquerors threatening to destroy anyone who disagrees." Within 1 year, the Galactic Council was gone. Some alien species adapted to the new reality and became allies with humans. Others tried to maintain their old ways of ruling through fear and found themselves isolated in a galaxy where everyone had learned that any line could be erased. The galaxy discovered that humans did not just fight wars differently. They fought to make sure that such wars would never be necessary again.